Word off, Serena. And we are currently live. So welcome Team Planet Venus. My name is Dr. Venus Evans Winters, also known as Dr. V. And as you all know, I am the creator and founder of Planet Venus and Planet Venus Institute. Today, I am so happy because I have Cain-Day. The way she walks, the way she talks. And also our co-host here on Planet Venus, Miss Raven. And so before we get started, I'm going to let Raven introduce herself, and then I'll let Cain-Day give herself the introduction she deserves.
Everyone, you probably know me from last time. My name is Raven Preston. I'm the Director of Technical Communication at Planet Venus Institute. That's pretty much a lot of things, so I'm not going to bore you with it, but I'm basically just always here for Dr. V with anything regarding Planet Venus. And so super happy to be here with Cain-Day, Thurman. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right, Cain-Day.
Hey folks, I'm Kehinde Thurman. I think I like to keep it really simple. I write to and for Black girls and women. There are a lot of components to that, working in the nonprofit sector, by day, but really I think that is just the gist of it. Like, I love Black girls and women, and like, that's what I exist to do, serve. So that's as good as it gets for me.
Yes, and I'm actually it's interesting because Cain-Day, she has a whole like beauty studio behind her. You like have my like studio. It's like I can go like pat my face and then I could get on the pole.
Listen, look, like, the empty nest lifestyle. Okay, this is when you done raise the babies and you finally get a space all for yourself. Like, this used to be my bedroom. So this is the biggest room in my house. I was like, I'm gonna devote that to my space. So yeah.
Yes. I love it. So you've earned it, right?
Thank you. Yes. Yes. I don't know what's gonna happen if any of them kids need to come back home, but we'll figure that out later.
They're gonna learn a thing or two. And then we got Raven. Raven is in Texas, so I'm so glad that she could make it today because she just got like some power back and water and all that.
Yeah, water.
Yeah.
So glad you are safe and warm.
Yeah, we were really lucky. really lucky. We just got off water restrictions yesterday. So I'm glad I can do laundry. Like, it sounds so like small, but I'm super excited about doing laundry later.
That's the important thing. So while we have Cain-Day here, Cain-Day, can you tell us who you are? And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna tell our audience, I've had the privilege and pleasure of at least watching your life for about 10 years, right?
Oh yeah, at least that.
Yeah. I usually go by the kids' age, so I think about 10 years. And we've traveled together, we've cussed together, we've cried together, we've prayed together, we've had libations together, right? But tell us in your own words who you are.
You know what? It's interesting that you're asking that question, because like meeting you and having you was one of my first examples of like the woman I wanted to be to other Black girls. Like, I looked up to you. I was just so in awe of everything about you. And you were like just so down to earth and so accessible to me. And just like, and it was one of my early indications, you and Dr. Nancy Tolson, of like, oh, I could still be me and do this thing. Like, I don't have to switch it up and not be myself. And so like to come, across a Black girl from the South Side, right, no less, and to like be like, hold up, I don't have to switch it up. Because at the time, I studied philosophy in undergrad. Y'all know what that looked like, with nobody who lived and loved like me up in that space. And so to have that access, like, I was a very broke, not student with 3 kids, and you're like, you riding? We ride, so that's like who I am. Is, I used to define myself as a survivor for a lot of years, and that's still very much true. And in recent times, I'm exploring thriving, right? And so like, I'm a survivor. I'm a thriver. I am, somebody who just wants to make myself as accessible as the amazing Black women around me made themselves to me. Sometimes I'm still like in awe of the folks that I get to interact with. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was reading your books and like you talk to me. So I want it to always be just like that. No matter what I'm doing, I just want to be accessible in the same way, because it made all the difference, like, in terms of not feeling like I had to hide myself, to be any of the other things that I wanted to be. So if I would describe myself, I'm a survivor who is working on thriving and just trying to pay it forward in the same way that folks poured into me.
Yeah, that's interesting that you used to identify yourself as a survivor, and that's a big word. That can mean a lot of things to many different people. And now you're shifting your mindset into thinking about being a thriver. What does it mean to thrive as a Black girl, right? And that's interesting to me because I think at the time when you and I met and we were riding and dying, ride or die chicks, I was focused on resilience. And then I began to shift the conversation to resistance. And so how does the two go together? You're always, for me, I'm always resilient, but in what ways, could I become more of a resistor to the same oppressions that required me to become resilient? And speaking of, one of the places we drove to was to Michigan. Was it Michigan State, I believe, where we met Patricia Hill Collins.
Hello.
And she was feeling your fro, right?
Listen, I still pull that picture out and I'm like, Patricia Hill Collins was feeling my fro. She mentioned my fro.
Yes. She like picked you out in the audience. And so we were there, and we have that picture. I have that picture too. For if we need more collateral, Raven, I have that picture.
I would like to see this picture, and I'm going to share it.
Yeah. And so ironically enough, Cain-Day, because she's very humble. Okay. Cain-Day is very humble. And not only did we meet her, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw was there also. And so it's interesting because since then you've been published. You've been published with Patricia Hill Collins, Dr. Patricia Hill Collins, as you said in your blog, the Black feminist, the Black Patricia Collins. And since then, I've been working with Professor Crenshaw. So there you go. See, things come in full circles, right?
Yeah, not just full circle, but it's this sort of thing for me that like, so I started blogging 2007, so like 13 years ago. And when I started blogging, like my original thing was like one woman, if I can like impact the life of one woman. I never wanted to be focused on the numbers, because I can attest, you go viral, it can do some things, and you be wanting to do it again. And so I try to take it back to like that one woman sort of thing. But like, again, being in philosophy and then politics and government, and being surrounded by one of the folks like, Patricia Hill Collins, Kimberly Crenshaw, these were folks who like were life-giving and like were what I held on to and really, what I had. There were no Black women in my philosophy department. I was going outside of that department for the Black folks who were at my alma mater. And so like really having, being in a space where I never even like thought about this space, but being in a space where my name is anywhere near next to Kimberly Crenshaw or Patricia Hill Collins, you know what I mean? And it is a thing that I had to, in the spirit of thriving, like just kind of rest in and revel in, because I have a tendency to like, oh, I did this thing. That means it wasn't impossible, so it wasn't that hard. So what's the next thing? What's the sort of thing? But like to really just sit like, no, this is the thing that like, sitting in the undergrad classroom, dealing with microaggressions and outright aggression from folks that like I just wouldn't have even thought about, and so it's an amazing thing, and exactly why I keep pulling out that picture, because I'm just like, oh my goodness, Collins cited my work, like somewhere in the world she knows, she read something, so like no, and to be able to have it with pieces where that were not in standard English, like to have it with pieces where I was able to just like speak with my voice, is even more amazing, because as y'all can see from the tone of the blog, like I write it as it comes to me. It's a mixture of code switching sometimes, because I do world travel, and so I do speak both. But yeah, like to have that validation that it didn't need to be this inaccessible academic language to still be, recognized, I think was the cake.
And I think that your blog is accessible across communities.
It is.
I mean, I think that you're accessible across communities, quite frankly. And that's why we wanted you on Planet Venus, right? Because as you know, I can imagine what it's like being a cinnamon brown Black girl from the South Side, sitting in this hostile space and drenched in whiteness, right? Especially at that time, you're a younger mother, every stereotype they have of us, but you still have to hold your own in philosophy. And I think you bring all of that to your writing. And you're not just a blogger, right? You're also an activist. I mean, because your writing is definitely centering the experiences, the lived experiences of Black girls and Black women. And you definitely don't approach it from this politics of respectability. I'm not saying you're rogue. I'm saying that you actually beautify our lives. Yeah. Your micro stories are like microcosms of our spirits.
Yeah. And that's what I try to hold on to in that sense, right? Like, there's a piece where I talked about, writing these academic pieces and twerking at the same time. Like I'm both at the same time, sometimes, in the same space, different times. But like for me, it's now really important to one, maintain and hold on to joy everywhere I can, in every piece that I can get it. And to try to bring myself to, because there are still spaces that don't get the full me. But the difference now is that they don't get it, not because I don't deserve it, but because they don't, right? It's because those spaces don't deserve the fullness of me. Whereas back in the day, I might have thought that I didn't deserve to be in some spaces. And so it's a switch that I like. And one of the things that my therapist had highlighted in the course of—
Shouts out to therapists. Shouts out to therapists.
Listen, I am an advocate. I'm currently between therapists, but definitely, looking to get me another one. And I'm a strong promoter. Everybody who knows who talk to me, I'm always like, you should go to therapy. You should go to therapy. It don't matter what's going on. Especially if you think you are very healthy. If you think you are really healthy, you should probably really be all up in some therapy. But yeah, no, and that's what I like about this space. And all of the spaces, like, I don't know, wasn't that long ago, you wouldn't have seen a poll in my background somewhere, because I would have thought that it was just not appropriate. But like, it's me. It's me. And so, it's all appropriate.
Yeah. So when you're in philosophy classes, when you're doing racial justice work, gender justice work, because you do a lot of racial gender justice work around sexuality and sexual violence, who do you represent?
Tiny. 14-year-old, tiny, run the block with a baby, who had no idea that the spaces she was going to enter were going to look really different from her little South Side world. Yeah, it's really just about what does she need in that moment? What is she going to need later that she is not aware of needing? And who's going to be at this table, right, to represent her? Because she ain't here right now, because she ain't here yet. But who's going to represent her while she's there? That's what I'm representing. every step of the way. 14-year-old me with a baby on her hip, who, you know, had every lived experience that people wanted to blame on me and not the systems around me that attempted to, you know, impede any progress I was trying to make, not the, you know, welfare system that wanted to impose all these ridiculous work requirements on a 15-year-old who was trying to take care of her baby, not, you know, the doctors who looked down and, you know, were surprised to find that my child was clean. Yeah, no, like that's who I'm representing in all those spaces.
So I have a question. I am the peer educator for the Black Girls Mental Health Academy under Planet Venus. And so I work with a lot of 14-year-old to 18-year-old girls, specifically in neighborhoods. Not that they feel unsafe, but they're struggling with a lot of mental illnesses, and they're dealing with their families, especially in a pandemic. They're stuck in the house. Like that's something that I didn't have to deal with. I was always out with my cousins. And so what kind of like advice can you give me as a peer educator for these girls? So when they enter the academic space of college, because these girls are going to like really top colleges, what kind of advice do you have for like imposter syndrome? I know you spoke a little bit about that before, but I just want to hear what you have to say because I'm still struggling with that myself.
Yeah, first of all, the 14, 18, that's my favorite group. Like I love that group and I really miss that group in person. The first thing I tell people nowadays is like the real imposters don't have imposter syndrome. Like that's the thing. The real imposters do not have imposter syndrome. They're gonna go out for every opportunity, regardless of whether they're actually qualified or not. But you know, imposter syndrome is a very real thing. It is also a tool of white supremacy, but it is still very real, right? Like in the way that it impacts us. You got to move anyway, right? Like, you know, Audre Lorde, you know, I am afraid. I'm still speaking, right? Like you do it anyway. I think the thing that worked for me was, and which is I'm coming to in a different way, was I was always speaking for the folks coming behind me, right? And it was easier for me to do that. It was easier for me to take this opportunity based on what it might do for the sisters who are coming behind me. And so I think that helped me for a long time. Like it's not about me. I'm really afraid to be in this space. People don't know this. I am very afraid of public speaking. I am very nervous about it. I am very shy. I do it simply because, you know, I do it for folks who look, live, and love like me. And so, you know, the first thing I say about imposter syndrome is that like it is a tool of white supremacy, so resist it. Do the thing anyway. Do the thing anyway. Yeah, you're gonna be scared. Do it anyway. And find your people in every space, like find your people. The thing about these institutions, Ivory Tower, is that, you know, they send us to get an education, but we usually come out with PTSD of some sort. Like we coming out scarred. And that's the thing. And people are like, oh, but like you got a college degree and you got a graduate degree. And it's like, yeah, but what else did I come up with?
Other things.
And so, you know, I'm so blessed in my network. Like, you know, I have had Dr. V, I've had Dr. Nancy Tolson. I've had these folks, you know, really early in my space that like I was able to like always have that and always have somebody. And then also I was watching them. And so I knew that this thing that was happening to me wasn't a me thing. It was, you know, a product of the environment. And so it helped to know I wasn't alone. It also helped to, you know, like watch them navigate and to see them keep pushing in spite of these things. Like, you know, no, it's not easy. Still not, you know, I still got sisters in academia and I'm just like, whoa. But find your people, you know, do it anyway. And remember that the real imposters ain't got imposter syndrome. So don't let them take all the opportunities.
I haven't watched this video.
You're gonna rewatch it.
Then we're gonna put this in the course.
Yeah, we could put it in the Black Girls mental wealth course. And I was thinking too, Kehinde, I I have this theory. I actually have a theory that Black women graduate students, especially, are being traumatized by the research and writing process itself. Um, just because I think that the mothers who came before us, the scholars who came before us, they told us we need to be researching more about Black girls and Black women's experiences, right? Then you have people like me just kick the door down and said, let's, well, you asked for it. Hey, let's go to your homes.
That's what you want.
Right. Let's turn the light on ourselves and let's see, what's out there. And we had each other. But now I'm thinking that because of these silos and the isolation, that a lot of Black women are, are matriculating through these higher ed systems alone. And I mean culturally alone and spiritually alone and away from their families, right? So, and they're not coming in these cohorts where that were intimate, 5 or 6 Black people, we held each other down, right? So even if the faculty are alone, I can still call Cain-Day and be like, hey, we need to go road trip because we got, Patricia Hill Collins speaking 6 hours away, right? And so we figured out how to do it. We broke bread together, we ate together, things like that. But I think now we still have, women writers and women scholars like yourself. They're going in, they're doing this hard work. They're turning lenses now too on themselves. So it's less voyeuristic. So when you unpacking all of that shit, can I say shit? Are they gonna censor me on Facebook?
It's already there. I don't know. We're there. We're there now.
I think you can say it.
Just kebab. Just kebab. I don't get kicked off Facebook because I say something crazy. And so I think what's happening now, though, they have less resources in that isolation. And when I'm talking about cultural resources, sisterhood, and then, as you know, too, the financial situation for higher ed is out of control. A lot of people are paying out of pocket and taking out privatized loans, it's all this debt. But so with that said, speaking of being alone, how have you been navigating the pandemic? What is like sheltering in place looking like for you now on the East Coast, especially?
Ooh, first I got to acknowledge that it looks like a lot of privilege. I work from home. I can afford to have my groceries delivered. I can do virtual health appointments. I essentially don't have to leave my home if I don't, if it's not required. So it does look like a lot of privilege there. At the same time, the isolation is real. I've got babies and grandbabies. My oldest grandbaby just turned 2 on February 11th, and I wasn't with her for that. My youngest grandbaby is now like getting teeth. He just started saying mama, and like I'm so nervous that he's gonna walk and I'm not gonna see it for the first time. And that's super real, especially as somebody who has managed depression for almost all of my awareness of life, and as somebody who now navigates anxiety in a way that I never had to before. And so there's this privilege that like says, don't complain because you're in a much better position than most. Although I try to stay away from that whole, somebody has it worse sort of measurement for what we can be sad about. But then there's a mental health component. I'm an INTJ. And so historically, I like being by myself. Like, just give me my books and I'm fine. But that was a choice. When I had a choice, it was one thing. One of my good homegirls moved to Maryland not long ago. And like, because of the pandemic, I haven't seen her, you know what I mean? And so I got this like sister so close to me and yet like not at all. So it's been an up and down, definitely an up and down. I'm still working, during the day with a nonprofit whose work like became even more critical in this pandemic. And so things are just go over there as they work to free folks from jail. And so there's this like go. And then there's like some days where I just want to go back to my bed. And I'm trying to just have less guilt.
I need 10 minutes, let me
I'm trying to have less guilt about that. Like, it's Saturday, you've been in bed all day, and I'm trying to just be like, and that's okay. Like that's fine. You don't have to be doing all the time. Because truth is, even when I'm laying there, I'm thinking about like, oh, what could I do to, you know what I mean? So I'm still not really, and that's what I really want to get into, like some real rest, because transparently, I don't think I'm still getting real rest. But yeah, it's a mixed bag of, knowing that I do have a lot of privilege in this pandemic, also knowing that, like, my mental health has always been, something that I'm striving to, sometimes I'm treading water. And it's been I think I talked about this on Facebook not long ago. Michelle Obama talked about a low-grade depression a while back. And I was like, is she just trying to say she might say depressed? Like, girl, just say you depressed and go. Like, what do you mean depression? Like, what is that? So I thought she's been a little funny.
I've actually never heard the term low grade. Like that's DSM-5. So I'm like, hey, if she want to claim it.
I thought it was some, presidential type stuff. I didn't know, but I was like, Southside, what are you talking about? We don't got that over there. But then, it was not long ago where I realized I've kind of had this like little nagging, lurking, like always at the surface, you know what I mean? Like I've come to recognize when, a depressive episode might be coming. And it hasn't been that. It's just always been this thing that's just kind of, and I was like, oh, that's what she's talking about.
Interesting you bring that up, Candy. This is why I wanted you on here, because I can have these conversations with you, right? Because we kind of have that same backdrop in our mind. We still got that little girl here from growing up on the South Side. Like we do, period. It doesn't go away. She doesn't go away, right? And so when I think what I'm seeing, and especially with Black women and Black girls that I work with, is that what we thought, like, damn, did I just wake up like with depression, whether it's mild depression, moderate depression, whatever. I think that what I see is that a lot of these girls are navigating the streets with what people are seeing as anger, irritability, or she bipolar, right? She don't be wanting to do nothing. She quick to jump off. I think that's some anxiety, but anxiety can actually be depression. Depression can sometimes present as anxiety, right? Because you low-key don't want to be there. You low-key didn't feel like going to school that day. You low-key thought that maybe somebody is going to shoot up this party, right? Or you low-key, you don't, it's always this kind of being on edge, lurking, waiting, or I didn't want to be here in the first place. I would have rested, but my parents had me cooking and cleaning and, taking care of kids and going to school when I didn't want to go to school.
Yeah, it's a thing I think about with my own parenting. And, I parented very young, right? I had my first one like 2 weeks after my 15th birthday, and my third child when I was 21. And I think about the ways that we set kids up to go to school. You go to school 5 days a week, right? I have a job, and on any given day, if I decide I don't want to do work, then I say I'm not going to do work that day. And I don't. And I don't have to have I don't have to go to the doctor to do that. But I think about how we never gave kids that, right? Like as a whole, the school district, if you take your child out of school for the day, then you need a doctor's note, not just to, Shorty just wasn't feeling it because they have mental health care needs. But yeah, we know the numbers of Black girls and sexual abuse. So there's that part, right? There is this is what's happening. I haven't told anybody, or worse yet, I did tell somebody and nobody did anything, right? So they're navigating that, and you wondering why, a student might be acting out, as they say. They're navigating depression, their anxiety. I could not imagine dealing with the world and the internet. Like, it was a saving grace for me that didn't nobody have cell phones.
My biggest problems was like YM. Like, where are the Black girls in the YM magazine? And
listen,
now can't stay on them. Yeah. So what do you think about? I don't want to go deep into Gorilla Glue head girl. The Gorilla Glue thing. I don't. But what do you think about? Because I know you do have a daughter, and you're a beauty influencer. So, and you're very educated and do gender justice work. So, what do you think about now the look that we have to achieve, right? So I wanted to look pretty because it was you coming on, and
right.
Hello.
Confession, Raven. I have a confession. When I don't know how to do something, like it's I'll text Cain-Day, like, Candy, what eyeshadow should I be using? And is this gonna be the right lip color? That's how bad I am that when it comes to this kind of stuff. But Cain-Day, what do you think about, I mean, to be a girl during the age of social media, nails have to be done, eyebrows on fleek, eyelashes, even hair, weaves, braids, wigs, like, is that standard? Is it getting too high, or are we just girls just want to have fun? I remember I thought I was Janet Jackson, like Cindy Lauper, Madonna. Like, tell me.
I think it depends on the why. Hold on, allergies. I think it depends on the why, right? Like, I got cute because I was finna get on 2 Black girls, so like I need to, like, let me do something. So I think it depends on the why. I in the like professional world, I've been wearing sweats and tennis shoes for a good 3-4 years. I don't know. I injured myself, stopped wearing high heels, and I was like, why would I go back? It makes no sense to me. And so, like, I changed that standard a long time ago. Also, like, the quality of my writing doesn't change. Like, if you, whether I'm wearing sweats or heels, like, I'm still gonna get this $1 million grant. Like, it doesn't. But it took a lot for me to come to that. Like, no, it really does not matter. But it can also be therapy. Like, when I'm putting on my makeup, I'm worried about whether I'm blending. I'm not thinking about what's going on CNN. I'm not thinking about what's happening in other spaces. I'm just thinking about whether I want to use this shade of blush or that shade of blush. And it's almost a form of meditation, in the sense that, like, you're just there centering yourself, thinking about yourself and what, ideally you like, and what's going to make you happy. So I think it can be a tool of both. At the same time, there is definitely, some pressure. We know that women who wear makeup get higher job offers than those who do not wear makeup for job interviews and such, right? So there's still these dynamics where, like, if you're doing it for that reason, then that doesn't feel like a really good reason to have to do it. That said, I certainly, have played that game and popped on a face for an interview. What I don't do anymore is straighten my hair, and I have not done that for quite some time. I refuse to straighten my hair for a job interview or anything like that. But yeah, I'll pop on a little foundation and some. So yeah, I think it's about the why. Like, if you're doing it because it's fun and because you want to do it, and because, as Black girls, we like to show out, especially when we're other Black girls, then, like, yeah. But, if we're doing it because the world has, taught us not to be comfortable in our own skin, then that's a very different sort of thing. But that's the surviving and thriving, I think, right? And in survival mode, I'm doing this because the world has taught me this thing. In thriving mode, like, I'm doing it because I feel like it, but also you will get this ponytail and this bare face because I'm okay either way.
You just actually gave me a very interesting concept that I'm going to think about. So in the therapeutic space, we do mindfulness, we do meditation, I do hypnosis, hypnotherapy, I even do yoga. Could you imagine? I'm doing yoga therapy with couples these days. And so, and we also recommend that people who have like PTSD, they can do drama, right? Acting. And so, but we do all of that. The writing, the journaling is because any type of manipulation, sewing, quilting, moving your body, actually helps to heal pathways, neurological pathways. So with that, I don't want to get too scientific, but with that said, you just had me think of this idea that makeup, putting on your makeup, your eyeliner, eyelashes, hair, that is a form of manipulation. So maybe it is therapeutic, right?
I find it very therapeutic. And a few years ago, I was a barefaced, just maybe a lip gloss, probably not even that kind of person, and like now
I need you to come stage mine, because I got this one little picture to let y'all know I'm on air. Other than that, fighting kids and stuff in places and spaces. And so how do you define mental health?
How do I find healthy mental health?
Or how do you define mental health?
I would, that's an interesting question, because it's a thing that we talk about all the time, but I'm not sure I've articulated the definition for it. I I think I would define it similar to the way that I define physical health, right? Like, so physical health being the management or maintenance of the body, right? Whatever that looks like. And sometimes we're doing a good job of managing and maintaining that, and sometimes we're not. And so I would define physical health as the management and maintenance of the mind. And sometimes we're doing a good job, and sometimes we have better tools to do that. And sometimes we don't. And most times with both of those things, we need some outside assistance to navigate them. So yeah, that's how I would define it at its base.
Yeah,
I love that
and
definition.
and Raven, I want you to define it for us too, because the reason why I was asking is because I've been moving more. I know that Black people, we're just now starting to embrace this concept of mental health, but I think we still think of it from a pathological perspective, like something is wrong with you, you're diseased. But I always try to compare it to going to the dentist, the gynecologist, or going to see your primary care physician. I see it as maintenance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, I prefer the term mental wealth, right, Raven, in our space, just because I'm at a point now, of course, drawing from womanism and Black feminism and critical race theory, where I do want to see Black women become more comfortable thinking about any health more holistically: educational health, financial health, physical health, spiritual health, intellectual health, and cultural health. I want us to consider that, because those are all things that have been taboo conversations to us. Even if we have wealth, we don't like talking about our financial situation.
I need us to do better. I need us to do better on all of those fronts too, for 11 different reasons. But I'm gonna let Raven define mental health first before I get into that financial component.
So I never really actually thought about defining it. I've always thought about what you do to get there and to maintain it. And I never really thought of the word maintenance. I don't know why. I always thought that is something mechanical, but it, like you said, it's a maintenance. And I've always tried to articulate that, especially in the Black Girls Mental Health Academy, that it's not something that you're always going to maintain. It's not something that you're constantly going to be at this level, especially we're going to acquire this peer educator certificate. And so the idea is that they're thinking I have to be this person that's maintained well all the time. And that's something I'm always no, sometimes I'm not the best peer educator, and that's when I have to go dark. And so I don't really have a definition, but I do like the word maintenance. And I think I'm going to put that on a board and just put maintenance there, because that is a highly under.
And that's part of it too, because for me, part of maintaining my mental health is recognizing when I'm not okay. That was a more recent sort of thing. Back in the day, it was just you weren't okay, and you just, but recognizing that I'm not okay, sitting in my feelings. I used to think that, if I'm feeling sad, I need to hurry up and get past this. Learning to rest in feeling bad and process it for as long as I need to process it. No, I feel this way. I don't have to feel better right now, happier right now. I'm feeling this way, perhaps because of a reason, perhaps because I am just a Black girl who lives in the United States, and that comes with a whole lot of things. But I like mental wealth because it really lets me think about the ways that wealth in so many ways has, been denied to Black folks, right? We think about wealth in that sense, and mental wealth, that's another, area where it's been historically denied Black folks. And we have to do so much more to get it than other folks, simply by virtue of our past and things like that. And even on the side of it's like the credit score. Sometimes if you're using more of your credit, that score goes down, right? And sometimes it's a bit higher. Credit scores are a whole nother tool of white supremacy, but maybe the analogy works. But it's not always going to be at this, space. And that's something I struggle with, being a person who, does videos and public facing things like that, because, there are some videos with me breaking down that have not seen the light of day, right? And sometimes I struggle with like, should this be in the space too? You know, should this be right alongside the space? And I try to do a good job of balancing being really transparent. And I think in my writing, I'm very transparent onto all my business in these internet streets. It's a little more vulnerable when I'm doing it on video, but I also had to navigate how much of me do I have to give to the world? Like, you know, recognizing too that like, yes, your goal is to be transparent. You want to be, you want to serve folks, but every piece of you, especially the pieces that you are still working to be healed, are not pieces that you have to give, and especially not right now. So I navigate like those different sorts of things. So, you know, one, to keep it real. I don't want anybody to think that like, you know, my life feels like this room looks all the time, but that's also why this room looks this way. I really learned how aesthetics play a role in my health. And you know, I like looking at what things that are pretty to me. And so really navigating that, and, you know, different spaces are different. My bedroom is almost like there are some poems from Black women around the world on the wall. That's it. Other than that, it's a bed, because I've also, from my mental health, I've learned you need to sleep and you don't need all the things. I couldn't sleep in this room. This is too much. So really managing what I need, when I need it, and switch and let up is necessary.
Yeah, and I do think that sometimes giving too much of yourself away, that is a trauma response. But I think too, for me, having feet in two camps, you know, the camp of the private sector and the public sector, that, and I don't know if it's private, but you get my point. But that public, that's the problem with academia. It's very voyeuristic, and nobody wants to admit that. And so it's almost like the Black woman scholar is still a scientific specimen. And a part of growing up and bringing forth your true spirit, and I'm thinking about a cotton witch, you know that, right? Bringing forth your spirit, your true spirit, you start to learn, I'm not giving these folks no more of me. They're not worth it, right? So they can't afford me, so to speak, right?
Listen, yeah, no, and the disconnect, I remember, you know, in academia, and, you know, I remember early when I was writing something and I was like, why the hell I keep saying they? I'm not talking about they, I'm talking about we. Like, what am I doing here? And the professor told me that like it was less credible if it was a we versus a they. And I'm like, but what are you talking about? You know, and there's this voyeuristic disconnect that you're supposed to engage in, right? And anything else is considered not, you know, never mind that like all they did was find a bunch of white men to say the same thing that they had said, and that was credibility. But that was like a really difficult sort of thing for me to try to wrap my mind around. But I also recognized that was the thing that allowed them to perpetuate whiteness in these ways, because as long as they could continue with the they for themselves, then they could act as if they weren't perpetuating these same systems, right? They could distance themselves from that, but that just didn't work for me. If it's a we, it's a we, and I need to be able to say we.
Now, your bachelor's is in philosophy.
Philosophy.
Women and gender studies, right? Yeah. And now what type of work do you do? Because I know some of our audience is definitely, we attract do you know this year I've served over approximately 85 people in a clinical space. Can you believe that? But we've served approximately 15 to 20 girls under the age of 22.
Oh, wow.
In our Black Girls Mental Wealth Academy, where they're learning how to be ambassadors of wealth and health, right? Black girls' mental health. So what type of work are you doing now, and what does your future projects look like?
Yeah, so it's important for me to name that I also completed my graduate studies in politics and government, and stopped short of defending my thesis because of the discrimination that I faced in that department. I have told folks before that was the first time, not the first time, but that was the closest I've come to feeling like my spirit was broken. And that's saying a lot for somebody who lived through Chicago in the 90s. So I think it's important to name that these experiences are like real and harmful and traumatizing. And I could not even talk about that experience for a very long time afterwards. But interestingly enough, so y'all know I started sexual assault, domestic violence, direct services. And at some point I switched to doing development work, trying to avoid burnout. And it was like, okay, cool, you're good at this thing. But I was also like, but I don't want to raise money. Like, that's not what I want to do. Along the entire way, I've always, and this was part of the reason that I needed to avoid burnout in the SVDV space, was because I was doing it in my day job and then I was doing it in my community. And so I was like on 24/7 because, you know, folks ain't trying to come to the institution, they want to come to the people that they know. And so that was what that, so I started doing development work, and was really trying to get back into the program space. I was like, no, I'm not supposed to raise money. That's not what I'm supposed to be here. And then started realizing like, oh, right, you know, Black women, Black-led orgs don't have the resources and accesses that some of these organizations I have worked for have. And so I consult with orgs. I only sign on to organizations whose mission I firmly believe in. I'm primarily working with Black women-led orgs. I absolutely, do work with other organizations as well, but it's a different sort of thing. On development, fundraising, it's a part of this work. And what I had to really come to understand was, for now, necessary part of the work. And it's a way that I can be of service to folks, and it took a lot to be like, but this isn't this part of the work. And then as I've always done, and this is also a thing that I want folks to note, it can be really easy to feel like your work is supposed to be on that, society, community level, but I've always kind of known that my place was on that individual relationship level. Like that has always been where I think, do my best work. And so I still serve in that capacity. Everybody knows my inbox stays open to folks. And so right now, while I am, of course, there's still my website, Cain-Day-Thurman.com, where I work to bring all of the pieces together. We've got Black Girl, Black Box. Current projects, I'm really excited about what I'm currently working on. In addition to writing, I'm still writing. There are four books in progress right now, which is also another sort of like, yeah, those are great. I'm excited. But I'm not going to talk too much about the current project. I'm looking to launch it this year, but I'll say it is the merging of the beauty for me. It is the merging of the Black feminist thought. It is the South Side. It is the academic. It's all of the things, and I'm excited, and I hope that folks are as excited. But yeah, for now, you can find me writing and doing video content at Cain-Day-Thurman.com. You can find me consulting on development needs for your organization. So that is grant writing, individual fundraising, fundraising campaigns, all of those sorts of things. I do that consulting. And then I speak on all things Black girl, in addition to sexual assault, domestic violence, all things around our navigating and writing as well.
Yeah, I love this. I love this like holistic picture, because people are like, oh my God, you're a research and policy scholar. How are you doing clinical work, right? Or how are you working with girls still? I mean, what if we're going to talk about Black girl magic and Black girls rock? Let's talk about Black girl power. And Black girl power means that when you're in tune to who you are, you also see the multifacetedness and complexity of what you're capable of. And you do need to know when to rest, right? And you need to
That
know
too.
when to have fun. That's
Yep,
it. You
that
can do
too.
it. You can
Yeah,
do it.
and that's what it was part of it too. I used to try to maintain all of the things in different spaces. So it was like, okay, let me keep the development work over
Me too,
here.
Candy, and that will kill you. That is spirit kill for sure.
Listen, and I had to say, like, what if the client comes to your website for grant writing and there's the BuzzFeed video? And I was like, that's exactly what I need. Like, you need to come
They
for
know what you're
consulting.
doing.
And you need to be like, oh, she will drop it. Like all of those things. Oh, wait, Ray, I see it. Did you have something in the chat?
Question for
Yeah, we do have a question. It's from Jaleesa Murphy. I think this would be a good question for the both of you. How do you make a distinction between transparency and vulnerability when it comes to showing up in workspaces and higher education?
Oh, wow.
Hey, Jaleesa Boo.
Go ahead, Kehinde.
So I don't. Well, no, I am not as transparent and vulnerable in workspaces. And by workspaces, I define those as like if I'm doing a 9 to 5-ish. And having worked in the nonprofit space, all of the isms that are within the world are very much present in those spaces. And so it can be quite rough. And bringing my whole self into those spaces, for me, has a particular impact. It takes trust for me to be my whole self in a space. And I don't necessarily have that kind of trust with every 9 to 5. They got them good health benefits. I appreciate it sort of space. And so I know people say, like, bring your whole self to every space. That's, for some people, maybe that's what health looks like. For me, it's not. And so I don't. People, my 9 to 5, I go by Erica in those spaces. That is a distinction for me. That is a level of vulnerability and trust that does not always exist in those spaces. Everybody else, call me Cain-Day, right? And everybody that I trust. If you only call me Erica, we probably not that cool, we probably don't know each other like that. And so for me, I think it's about making the distinction between when to be transparent and vulnerable in those spaces. Now, my therapist, she might slightly disagree, and she would have said, like, I should be transparent and vulnerable in all those spaces. But I also remember that I'm a Black girl from the South Side. Being transparent and vulnerable in every space has not historically always been a safe thing for me. It's a matter of life and death. So that there's that component of the, like, if I show up in, there's also the part where, like, if I show up in here and be transparent and vulnerable and you hurt me, I already know what's coming next. So let me help you out by not even putting you in a position to harm me in this way, because Bruce is gonna get real hook up in here. Like, so that's a long-winded way of saying that, you have to earn transparency and vulnerability from me in my workspaces. And higher education never did that for me. Higher education, with the people that I was interacting with, never earned transparency and vulnerability. All of the transparency and vulnerability that you see from me is because Black girls and women have earned that from me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, everything Kehinde said. I think that first of all, you can't be transparent with, vulnerable with everybody, nor should you be. It's like the distinction I like to make between being naked and nude. Naked is your body is fully exposed, whereas nude is a choice to let all of you show up. Okay, full face frontal. Again, it reminds me of the book Akata Witch, right? When sometimes she can show her spirit face, warrior face, and sometimes she can't, or Akata Warrior, both of her books. And so with that said, I think that's you learn that through wisdom. You learn that through wisdom, that you cannot and should not be vulnerable with everybody. And I think that, as Raven and Cain-Day would agree, that many Black girls and Black women, vulnerability wasn't a choice. You had to be. If white people walking on the sidewalk, you move out the way. If there's a man while it's coming near you while you're on the bus stop, you watching and you trying to figure out, do I pretend like I'm weaker than I am, or do I act a damn fool right now so that they can know that they, and you got to think, some of us, we get on buses really early in life, or we're on, waiting really early in life.
Second grade.
So I think vulnerability is a privilege and a right. And you need to know when it's appropriate to practice. And I don't think that everybody has a right to your vulnerability, nor should they. As far as transparency, I would speak for me. For me, I had to learn when to be transparent, because growing up where I grew up at and growing up with who I grew up at, I was taught you be strong at all times. Even though there were times when I should have been allowed to be vulnerable, but I wasn't. I was expected to show up. And so what I've learned, and I think, Kehinde, I hear you hinting at the same thing. Everybody can't take your transparency. Even like me saying that, you hear my voice slipping back into my who I really am. Everybody can't take it.
Yeah.
And some people confuse that transparency with being mean or being rogue, when for me, it's just being. It's who all of I am. It's not good, nor is it bad. It's like the wind. A wind can be a gentle breeze, or it can be a tornado. And so as far as the workplace, I mean, unless you work for yourself, sis, that's something you journal about. What does transparency look like for me? What does vulnerability look like for me? And when someone impede on either one, it's not their fault, it's your fault.
And people confuse both of those with telling all your business too, right? Like those are very different. Transparency, vulnerability, but also both of those things are still not necessarily and what I find in a lot of spaces where whiteness is really pervasive is they mistake wanting to know all your business for what they consider to be you being transparent and vulnerable. And if you're not telling them all your business, then, you got evaluations that say you are standoffish and aloof and all these other sorts of things. And so, knowing that for yourself as well.
Yeah, you have to know it for yourself, right? Yeah, you have to, that's something that has to be determined. And I think that when it comes to higher education, the assumption is that it's a safe place. That's that's an illusion. Yeah. That's an illusion. That's an illusion. And that's not to say everything about academia or higher ed is bad. I'm not. It's just you have to know, what does transparency look like for you? And are you willing to face the consequences of that transparency? Because transparency might look like, for some, telling all your business. For others, it might be telling your truth. And every last one of us on this live at some point have been punished for telling our truth, for being direct and being explicit, and at other times for being implicit. Yeah. So, so that's, I don't know. Hopefully we answered the question. Raymond, you got any thoughts about that? Because I know that you're in that space called higher ed in graduate school.
Yeah, I like Cain-Day, I'm very reserved, that I hate talking and I hate speaking up for people, but I've exactly what you said before. I get my audacity from the people that are going to come into this program after me. And it's crazy because they cannot fathom that I'm not just here for myself, that I'm here for the next 7 generations, that whole ideal. And so the vulnerability and transparency, I'm still working on, because to me, it's boundaries. And once again, that's something me and my therapist have been working on. She's like, you need to stop having such rigid boundaries. And I'm like, but I like them there. Yeah. They work for me. Them. Exactly. I've gotten this far. And so I think, once again, it's a privilege to allow other people into your lives. And so I found 3 people who I can honestly be like, okay, this is how I feel. Help me translate this so I can be, transparent and vulnerable, but in a way that I feel comfortable doing. And so it's once again finding that group of people who you can like consult with and be like, this is what you want to present, and this is how we're going to make it so that you're comfortable presenting it this way. And that's how I have been navigating it. I don't know if I'm doing a good job or not, but I'm still here and I'm going to graduate. So I hope so. That's all that really matters. And that's what keeps me going, is having the transparency done in the way that I feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the person who raised the question. That is a boundaries question, because I do believe there are healthy boundaries, and there are rigid boundaries and there are some people who have no boundaries. And I think that goes back to Cain-Day's point about social media. In some cases, there's no boundaries. In other cases, there's porous boundaries. Then there's rigid boundaries, and then there are flexible boundaries. And that comes with experience, and that comes with reflection. And for me, the one thing that has worked is mindfulness, to be honest, because I can backslide. I can backslide. And so, Kehinde, is there anything that we didn't ask you that we should have asked you?
I'm just glad y'all ain't, I know what to expect, because you know where the bodies are buried. So there's that part. No, this is oh my God, this is so like soul feeding. I just want to tell y'all, and that's the thing. I'm super at public speaking and talking to people, but when it is an exchange of energy in that way, then I'm good. My introversion is okay. And that's the thing people I think don't understand about introverts. Like they think, oh, extroverts get energy from people. Introverts do too, right? It's just when people are extremely draining, we cannot do that. And so to that end, on the, just transparency, vulnerability, like you said, find your people, have your people that you can be all of you in every space, in every capacity of you. And those are going to be people who have, who have shown themselves to be trustworthy with your whole self, because your whole self, like that's your spirit. Like when you trust somebody with yourself, you're trusting them with all of that self. But no, it's been a great conversation.
So this is the part where I turn into like Wendy Williams.
Ooh, okay. I spoke too soon about the bodies being buried.
Right, let me put my video off.
Y'all can't log off. Okay. So you're in the hot seat, right? Okay. So I'm at that age where I'm starting to get the darkness right here. Can you see that under my eyes? And we talk about beauty and vulnerability on planet Venus. It's there, I'm telling you. So, Kehinde, I know that you're like the queen, the Southside queen of makeup. So, in 30 seconds or less, how do I manage these dark circles in my eyes?
Okay. They're going to tell you get some sleep and all that stuff, drink some water. But Fenty by Rihanna, this Fenty concealer, okay, this will hide insomnia. This will hide a hangover. This will hide bad credit. Like this Fenty concealer, oh my gosh, it's everything. But only use a little bit of it.
Okay, good. Okay, one more hot seat question. I gotta get the beauty Fenty. Raven, make sure that you send that to me, okay? I'll use your
Fenty too.
and so one more question. There's a sister that we all love who has been very, very honest, a celebrity who's been very, very honest about her depression and her anxiety. And she's beautiful. And she's a homegirl from DC and went to HBCU. And I know she lost her dad struggled with PTSD, and he was a military vet. Recently, he passed away. And some people have been noticing some irony in her presentations because she talks openly about mental health and her own struggles with mental health. But then some of us saw this video of like alcohol and, cases of alcohol coming to her on IG and in commercials. How do we balance that? Like, how do we, is it okay for a celebrity to like really live her life out loud and have these contradictions? Or do you recommend, like I do, that some people, hey, remember there are specialists, and then there are people who are, learning to cope and, bring awareness to mental health in all of this multifaceted.
So I think that part of that is in our own privileging of certain addictions, right? And certain coping mechanisms. people think it's cute that I got 100 tubes of lipstick, right? But if that was 100 pints, then people will be like, oh, sis, you might want to like, right? It's smart that I have, 1,000 books, but like if that was, me hoarding something else, then it would be more readily apparent to people that are like, hey, maybe she, how many deliveries have come to this house, me buying things in this space. And so part of it becomes the ways that we recognize and privilege some forms of coping over others. Because we recognize that, like, we recognize alcohol as a more negative form of coping versus, some other things. And so to that, I say we got to check ourselves about our own, not saying that we should say, oh, every form of coping is healthy, but that we should look at the ways that we've identified some other things as healthy when they are in fact not healthy either. And so the other part is, I don't know where folks got the impression that like, because we speak and teach and talk about things that we are somehow immune from, those very things. Like, nah, that's not how any of this works. I can talk about depression to the degree that I can because I still very much navigate it. And sometimes I lose, the battle for that day. And so, I think it's ideally, she got some sisters who go and say, hey, sis, what you need, like, can I be of service to you in this way? But I really, I don't see it as much different as some of the other things that we do that, like I said, are just considered cuter ways of coping.
And I do think in that, again, so I've gotten those, I haven't addressed it publicly because I think you're right. It's complex. And we don't know either how the person make their coins, to be honest. And it's not like she's ever like sipping on air or anything, and also we're human. I just want to bring like the human
in a pandemic,
Black woman
in a
experience.
pandemic. Like we are in some stuff that we ain't just never navigated ever before.
You couldn't have asked me how I would be coping with this, this whole situation. I wouldn't have known, would not have known. I actually had to, it's interesting, I haven't drank in a minute, but that was a conscious, that you have addiction in your genes, that you have an addictive personality. Anything that I do, I probably go to the extreme. And so that was a conscious decision to not restock that bar. In this pandemic, that has been a very conscious choice because I know that I'm in the space that I'm in and I'm treading water with mental health on most days. And so it's like, and so I just try to limit opportunity for that.
Yeah. I agree. So we want to be mindful of Cain-Day's time as well as yours, Ravens. Kehinde, tell us, where can we find you? And we'll drop it in the chat too.
You can find me at KehindeThurman.com, KehindeThurman. You can find me at Kehinde Thurman on Instagram. Usually that's where my workouts, my squats go over there, along with the selfies. You can find me at Kehinde Thurman on Twitter, although I don't really tweet a whole lot because that world, I don't know how y'all do it. And then you can find me on Facebook at Kehinde Thurman as well.
Yes. So thank you for providing us with all of your business contacts. And I enjoy all of your spaces. I haven't seen you on Twitter as much, and I live on Twitter, but
Twitter, my mouth can't do Twitter. I'm too, I've been said so much stuff. And actually it happened years ago. Somebody said something to me and I came out of pocket and I was like, this is not the space for you.
Yeah, it's too late for me. I can never run for the president of the United States. It's too late for me. Yeah, in fact, I'm like, the sister asked about transparency and vulnerability. That's it right there on Twitter for me. I don't know what that's about.
I need you not to have the feds. I mean, you are looking at this. We know this.
Let me save yourself. So, Raven, Planet Venus, where can you find us?
You can find us here on Facebook at Planet Venus Institute. That's also our name on Instagram. Our Twitter, we we do use our Twitter. It's Planet Venus at Planet Venus 365. And we have a YouTube that's conjoined with Dr. V's. So if you go on Dr. Venus Evans Winter's YouTube, you will find our Front Porch Politics along with Dr. V's programming and the Millennials and the rest of us.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cain-Day, for
Thank you.
bringing all of your beauty. I intentionally wanted you here, especially following up with Dr. E, because you represent. When I asked you that question, what do you represent? I knew what you represent. I mean, you represent. It's beauty. If there's any definition for beauty, and if you can find it in a bee or a flower, a tree, even makeup, that's what you are, Cain-Day. So respect for everything.
Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you. And thank you. Like, seriously, I know you know, but I don't know if you know, like just how much the way that you pour into sisters in that early coming into these spaces really, because if you had, like treated me funny or shunned me in any way, it completely would have shaped my idea for how I could be in these spaces, who I could trust, if I could trust in these spaces. And so, to that, I am always appreciative.
All right, on that note, peace.
All right. Thank you so much. Stay safe and warm down there, Raven.
Well,
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.